Hi folks, before we get into this week's video, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button and hit that share button, and let's build up this Irish channel. Let's go folks, let's jump into it. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of John's Garage. This week we're back in Slattery's garage, a Peugeot dealer for over 50 years and award-winning from Gowran. Okay, so huge history here with Peugeot, and they've opened up their collection. This week we are incredibly lucky. This car is unreal. It is literally factory fresh and it has a really interesting story, and we'll get into all of that. So let's join me as we have a look at the 1995 Peugeot 405 GTX Estate. Well, wait for this folks, 1700 miles from new. Let's get into it. Okay, so as I said, 1700 miles, warranted mileage, all confirmed, all original. How on earth does that happen in this day and age? Well folks, the story goes that in 1995, January 1995, this particular car was assembled in France. Now that's unusual in itself because this is a right-hand drive model, and it was assembled to be used as a press demonstrator in the UK. So essentially it was built with every single option that was available at the time, packaged up and shipped to the UK. Now history becomes a little bit, we'll say, not clear after that, okay? We haven't been able to find it in any press releases or any reviews or anything like that, but it did resurface then in 2005 over in Silverstone as part of a display. In fact, there's a lovely picture of this if you Google it, parked up beside a Peugeot 905. From there, it went back to France where it was put in storage. Essentially, it was driven into a massive wooden crate, lifted up about 5 stories and put on a shelf, a huge big shelf in a massive warehouse in France, and it was left there back at the factory, back as part of the Peugeot collection. And last year it was unearthed. Okay, so they were doing a little bit of an inventory. They realized they had several different Peugeot 405 estates. They decided, well, this one's right and drive in France, that doesn't make much sense to keep, so let's sell it. And that's where Slattery stepped in and purchased it directly from Peugeot. Now, a couple of things, we are going to take this for a drive. I'm really chuffed about this because when I arrived down here this morning, I wasn't expecting that. That is not what I was expecting, okay? Now, the bodywork on this is completely flawless. But I did see it when it arrived. It was very dusty, it was quite dirty. The paint had gone, even though it was locked up inside in the massive crate, the paint had gone a little bit flat. You might ask, well, how did we get this back, or how did Slattery's get this back looking so well? Well, one man is responsible for that, and that's Taff, okay? Taff Jones here in Nina owns a valeting service, or detailing service, I should say, not valeting, called Taff's Valeting. And Taff gave this a ceramic coating, okay? He buffed back the paint, he brought back the original layers, and then he ceramic coated it. So he done a full, I suppose, paint, it's not paint enhancement, but a full detailing of it, and brought it back. And this thing, everywhere you look, is factory fresh. There is not a mark on it, there's not a dent on it, there's nothing on this car. So 1700 miles from new, as you can imagine, under the bonnet, inside, everything is flawless, okay? So incredibly lucky to have this. Really rare that this car is outside, never mind being driven or anybody being allowed near it, so we're incredibly lucky. Okay, let's jump inside and have a little look in there. Okay, so you're very welcome to the interior of this completely original Peugeot 405 GTX Estate. So, what did your money get you back in 1995? What could a fully loaded Peugeot 405 GTX come with? Well, we have a tachometer, pretty normal. Okay, we have a driver's airbag. That became fitted from about 1994 onwards for safety. Of course, you only get a driver's airbag, no passenger one. The steering wheel on this, it's like new. It is literally like new. The controls, like new. Everything in here works. You got front electric windows. Okay, you got a leather interior, this beautiful, great big armrest. You also, underneath this little panel here, have a little immobilizer where you type in your code to be able to start the car. This particular example is automatic, and one flaw on the original, and somebody out there watching this might be able to help us, okay? At some stage when this car was in storage, there's a panel that fits around here, around the gear knob. That went missing. If anybody has one of those panels to fit an automatic car, please get in touch. Slattery's would just like to finish off this and complete the originality of it, okay? Now, as was the rigor at the time, radio is covered up, but there's a handy little button here you can press, and that shows up the original Peugeot RDS diversity radio, okay? If you would like to have a gallows, or cigarette, you and me, you can press this button here and up pops the ashtray, and simply to cover it you just press down the covers. And of course, absolutely flawless, no nail marks, no nothing like that on this particular car. Next up, this one is fitted with air conditioning. The air conditioning, I'm told, works. You have slider controls for the fan speed. You have slider controls to select where you want it. Do you want it straight in the face? Do you want it on your feet? Or do you want it aimed up at the windscreen, okay? And you can also adjust the temperature here using this slider control. Next up, we have our hazard lights. We have our rear window defroster, and we have our front fog lights. We have a button here for the horn. I'm not going, well, hey, there we go, we can press it, okay? Interesting thing to note, normally at this period, airbags were big, massive, bulky things that made the steering wheels real big. This is actually reasonably nice size, okay? It's not too big, not too small. Of course, then we also have our digital clock, which was de rigueur, okay, would have been a selling point back at the time. And we have our air vents. One other nice little touch is this. It's not gloss finish, it's more of a matte finish wood trim on the dashboard, but it's not really matched by any other wood trim. Now, normally in these cars you would have velour seats. In this instance we have velour on the door cards, but that's it. And you also have an automatic driver's electric window, okay? So, as I said, very, very comfortable, very, very plush. The leather, as you'd expect, still smells like new in this car, okay? Still smells like new. Gorgeous car, absolutely lovely to sit in and to be, I'm supposed to be lucky enough today to get to drive it, okay? What else do we have? We have a little panel up here for storing your odds and ends, like driver's license, and of course the passenger also gets a little vanity mirror as well. Whoops, okay? Anyway, all back together. Let's jump in the back and have a little look in there. So you're very, very welcome to the rear of the Peugeot 405 estate. And this is the great thing about old French estates. There's loads of room. They're very comfortable, very plush. Now, I did say when I was up front in the driver's seat that there was electric windows up front. There's also electric windows here in the back. There's also a little storage bin here if you wanted to throw some odds and ends in it. And what else is back here? There's the most comfortable rear seats I've sat in a long time. You just sink down into these. They're actually really, really plush. One thing which is missing, which I'm actually a little bit surprised about, is a center armrest. I always thought these had a center armrest, but maybe not in this particular occasion. Now, headlining is falling down a little bit. Affects cars at age. These lovely little princesses eventually get saggy, and therein, boys, lies a lesson for life. So just remember that, okay? Everything that goes up must come down. Okay, anyway, moving on. There's nice solid plastic trim here that runs around the car. Good solid handrest up here, or hand holder up here. Other than that, it's just a nice place to be. Now, I remember when I was a young guy, about 1993, a neighbour of mine got a Peugeot 405 estate to replace a Citroen XM. And I just remember it being the nicest, plushest car that I ever sat in. It was much better than the Mazda 323 diesel, which we would have had at the time ourselves. Okay, it was much, much nicer car. Very plush, very reliable, very well built, and just able to put up with astonishing hardship. And that's what these cars were capable of doing. The diesels, especially the diesels, and the TU petrols, great engine as well. So as I said in the introduction, this is an unusual car for several reasons. Most notably the ownership history of it, being owned by Peugeot themselves, and also the mileage on it, 1,700 miles, 1,778 to be exact. But what makes this car a little bit more unusual is the fact it's right-hand drive, but it was built in their factory in France. Right-hand drive models were normally built in Ryton in the UK, in the old Roots Chrysler factory. It would have also built the likes of the Alpine and stuff like that. But this wasn't built there. It was built in France. It was shipped to the UK, and it was used as a press demonstrator over there. But as I say, it would be really interesting from around 95, 96, if anybody can throw up any articles on this car. I know the owner would love to see them, or even find out a little bit more about the press history of the car. They'd be really, really interested. Anyway, the whole point of a Peugeot 405 estate is the massive boot. So let's jump around there and have a little look in that. Okay, you're joining me at the back of the Peugeot 405, and this was its major selling point as an estate. So you had a push button here, put down your hand, give it a little pull, up comes this great big boot, revealing a massive load area, okay? Huge big load area. You can still see, this is back to the originality of the car. It has a protection sticker still covering the chrome finishing on the car. Anyway, lovely carpeted boot, well lined. Really kind of a step up on anything else that would have been available from most other manufacturers, apart from, I'm going to say, Citroen, Volvo, and maybe Mercedes, okay? Nobody else finished off an estate car like this because we're seen as a vehicle for hardship, okay? Now, if you want to double or even more than double the size of this boot area, you can push down the rear seats flat, you get a massive load area, and that's what made these cars so popular. On the new market and even on the second-hand market, they were real workhorses, and as I say, really solid build quality. They could put up with it. You might be wondering, what's this big hole here for? Well, Peugeot thought of that. There's a little sliding shelf here that comes forward and clips in there, and that's it. All your stuff is privately sealed away from prying eyes. Anyway, let's have a little look under the bonnet of this particular Peugeot 405 GTX. Okay, so up front on this 405 GTX, what do we find? Okay, we have headlamp washers up here, lovely chrome detailing to the bumper, and being a top spec model, it also has the chrome detail on the grille as well. That lovely 80s, 90s era Peugeot badge. That's the one they should bring back. I absolutely love that one. So to open up the bonnet, you do a bit better job than I'm doing here. You pull this bonnet catch here, and then the bonnet should lift up, and it does, okay? So here we have the engine, okay? This particular one is a 1.9 litre petrol. You would know it as well from the likes of GTI, 205 GTI, and so on and so forth, okay? So we could, or it could be tuned underneath here, but I wouldn't recommend it. But again, back to the originality. Everything here, we have our original stickers, our original identification plates, the bottles, the plastic, it's all like new, okay? That's the good thing about this car. And of course, since Slattery's have got it, they've done a full refresh underneath here. They've checked the wiring, they've checked all the rubbers, because you might think being 1,700 miles that this car is fully fresh. It's not. It's been locked in dry storage in a box for years, so it needs to be checked out. It needs to be confirmed that everything is good to go, and everything in this particular one is good to go. So let's take this for a drive, okay? On we go. So folks, you're very welcome to the test drive of the Peugeot 405 Estate. So for those of you who remember this system, I've got the key to the start position. I then type in our secret code for the immobilizer, which I think in every Peugeot was 1111 or 0000, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty much dealers set them to that because they annoyed customers. Straight down to D, which I know to be in that position, and we're off. Now, quick history lesson on the Peugeot 405. Designed by Pininfarina. Peugeot were doing a lot of stylish work with him at the time. It was available in saloon and estate, never actually as a coupe and never as a hatchback, unfortunately. Also, you may have seen a similarity between the Alpha 164 and the Peugeot 405. There would be a very, very close relationship, given that Pininfarina designed the Alpha 164 afterwards, okay? Went on to be massively popular for Peugeot. During its production run from 1988 to 1990, the end of 1996, very start of 1997, they built 1.5 million of these cars. They built them in several factories, but the two most notable for us were the one in France, which made the left-hand drive market models, and the one in the UK, which was the former, there goes the owner in the DS9, in the former Roots Chrysler factory, okay, in Wrighton, which built the 405 for the UK and Irish market, or right and drive markets in general, okay? Smashing car to drive, absolutely smashing car to drive. Now, that wasn't the end of the story, of course. The Peugeot 405 is still in production around the world to this day. Obviously, there's been several different updates and it's been tailored to suit different markets, but it's still in production, it's still there. In fact, it is the 13th longest production run of any car ever built, and it's up now to 2.5 million units produced and sold at this stage, okay? So what is this particular one like? Well, let's talk about the extras. Well, I didn't actually go through every extra when I gave you the interior tour earlier. So we have our digital clock, which also has a temperature gauge, exterior temperature gauge. We front and rear fog lights. We've electric windows all around. Driver's switches are here. Passenger door, driver's door, and also the driver's one is an auto up and down. We lift up the center armrest, very nice center armrest, and click it into position. We have controls here for the rear windows. We have a rear window lockout switch so the kids can't be messing with them. We have cruise control, a cruise control switch down here, and we have heated front seats also. Just going to turn down the temperature a little bit on my lovely solid slide control. I really like slide controls. They're really, really simple. Nowadays, everything's gone way too complicated. It's getting a little bit sunny out, so I'm also going to flick forward my sun visor. Other than that, this is the 1.9 litre version, matted to the automatic gearbox. What I describe it as is comfortable cruiser, okay? The handling, very, very nice. I'm going over very poorly surfaced roads right now. It's the start of February. Nothing is quite the way it should be on the roads, okay? And this car is smoothing out all the bumps. The seats, they're really, really soft. Really, really a good depth to the seats. Now, there were several different versions of the Peugeot 405. They took it rallying, they took it across the Dakar Rally. They also sold it in the States. In fact, it was the last Peugeot to be officially imported and sold in the United States. This was the 405. I don't know whether they got the estate version, but they definitely got the saloon version of it. So some of you might recognize it stateside. I know I have a lot of US viewers, UK viewers, and Irish viewers, okay? So you might recognize this car. Beautiful cruiser is what I would say. Lovely, lovely, comfortable car. Hugely popular with reps, family cars and private owners and stuff back in the day. Now, my own connection with this is a neighbour of mine, okay, owned one in 1992. They had a Citroen XM prior to that. In fact, they bought that in Slattery. They were a Citroen dealer at the time. Unfortunately, they had a crash. It made contact with a Ford Sierra, which wrote off the car. And I believe they were happy to see the back of it owing to one or two electrical gremlins which had plagued them, or several electrical gremlins which had plagued them. Anyway, it was replaced with a Peugeot 405 Estate, which went on to give years of service, despite dogs abuse from kids and the owner. The owner owned a bakery at the time. They used to use it to make deliveries. And yeah, it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And it stood out, even as a child, to me, it stood out that it was a nice car. It was very quiet inside, very comfortable. Now, this is back in the day. We used to play in the boot on the way into Limerick. Okay, we'd jump around in there, we'd have great crack. It was just a lovely, lovely place to be. And this car is bringing back all those memories. Now, but this particular one, being the really high spec, is very, very nice and comfortable. So the history of the car, built in January 1995, it was built as a press demonstrator for the UK, which makes it interesting in that it's a right and drive model, but it was actually built in the factory at France. Every extra was fitted to it. It was then shipped off. We're not sure what press events it was actually used for in that period. But anyway, 1996, it was returned to France, where it was put into storage at the French factory, okay? It was in a warehouse, locked up in there, available for test drives, but I don't believe any really happened. It resurfaced, according to our research, in 2005. It was pictured at Silverstone as part of a Peugeot display. I believe it was parked up beside a Peugeot 905 prototype car, or race car. It was pictured there, and then it went back to France and was locked up, put in a pallet, and I suppose for all intents and purposes, forgotten about. And it was lifted up high up on a shelf and left there at the factory museum. Whereupon last year they were doing an inventory, they came across it, they realised they had several Peugeot 405s estates, this one being right and drive. They didn't feel it was relevant for keeping in France, so they put it up for sale, and that's how the current owner purchased it. They purchased it direct from France. And this is the heartbreaking bit, folks. They contacted me and said, John, do you want to go on a road trip to get the car? And I couldn't. It was during a busy period at work, and it broke my heart. I had to say no, and I really would have loved to have videoed it and brought it along for all you guys, because I know you would have enjoyed seeing all of that. But yeah, that's Slattery's garage anyway, that have owned the car. It's part of their collection. And I will say one other thing, slatterysgarage.ie, if you are interested in purchasing a car, they have a huge collection of cars down there. They keep all the cars in great condition. And you might see some of their classic cars, which they often have in the showroom. So it's nice to be able to go in and have a look at them. And of course, being a long established, over 50 years experience selling Peugeots, if you have any problems or require any parts, or if you want to buy a car, they care about the brand. That's what I would say to you, is they're not just trying to sell you a car, they're trying to sell you a brand, okay, and an experience. And they've been doing that for long enough. I think they're on their third or fourth generation of the family. So they know what they're talking about, and they know what they're doing, okay? There's loads of Peugeots around my locality. There goes another one, okay? So I'm going to bring this car back to Slattery's garage now. Delighted they gave me the opportunity, contacted me. I wasn't expecting to drive this car. I was told initially, no, it's not available to drive. It's going to be in the showroom. You can video it in there. And then they called me this morning and said, you know what? You can drive it. You can take it and you can enjoy it. Off you go. And that's what we did. So really wasn't expecting to be able to do this when I came down this morning. So I'm really, really grateful to them for that. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, don't forget to do so now. All right, folks. So with that, I'm going off living my rep dream of 1995 in my Peugeot 405 GTX Estate. I'll talk to you again soon, folks. Bye-bye.